Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Garage Biljon and my 924 Safari build. In the previous episode, we dropped the rear axle from the car and you can see it sitting on the workbench over there. If you didn't see that episode or you're new to my channel, I'll put a link up here for you to catch up. But in this episode, we are going to start the rebuild of this rear axle. So let me take you through all the parts that I've got for this car and the reasoning behind them all. So we'll start with these two non-original parts. These are parts I sourced from Partworks in Germany, and they are solid steel mounts for the top suspension arms. Now, this is the first one. It goes onto the body through this hole and it sits on this arm like that. And I bought this because the original parts were not available for a long time, and now that they are, I'm still not going to buy them, because this for just one side on the original Porsche part is €220, and the other one that sits over here is pretty much the same price. So it's again €220 for a Porsche original part. So you are looking at a total of nearly €1,000 just to replace these two top mounts. And while I like doing things the Porsche way, €1,000 for a couple of mounts to me that's just insane. I'm not going to be doing that. So the other thing we're doing is we are replacing the rubbers inside this end cap. These are these two guys from Powerflex. And then I think this is Powerflex Black Series, but this might also just be a generic brand. I didn't order from Powerflex, I ordered this from Rose Passion. So this one goes in there. And then we have a new shock. It's the same spec as I've got in the front there, which is Bilstein B6. And you can see this is the green that I've got in the upright on there as well. And then the last bit we'll be doing is replacing this bushing with a new bushing. So this is what we are going to be starting on in this episode. So I would say sit back, relax, and let's get going. Alright, so the first thing I want to do on this is just clean it up a little bit before I start taking it apart. You can see there's all kinds of gunk on it and it's really quite nasty. So I will take the vacuum cleaner and a brush and I'll just keep on brushing it and trying to suck up as much of the dirt as I can. Alright, that's looking a lot better. At least now there's no loose dust on this thing anymore. So just a little bit of rust. So that's a lot better. So we can now start disassembling this rear axle. Alright, so I've got this mount out, and then I suddenly realized that it actually doesn't hang in the mount. It just is a kind of a stabilizing mount. So it could have stayed in the car, and I just had to release this nut that was on the bolt that was through here. So for you guys taking this apart, remember you can keep that mount in the car and just take out the nut. The next thing we're going to do now is we are going to start removing the trailing arm. So this is a 19mm nut, and I think all of these are also 19mm nuts. So this is going to be a tough one, I know this already. So I'm going to put some WD-40, I'm going to heat it up, I'm going to try and get this guy to want to release its hold. I've got two swing arms on the floor. They were insanely difficult to get loose, mostly because you can't get a ring spanner on the nuts and you have to work with open-ended spanners. So I've lost one or two tools there on the bench. I'll show you in a second. But I've got the torsion tube now lying here on the bench. The only thing left in it is the end caps and the torsion plates themselves, which is what I'll be disconnecting next. But as you can see, I have lost my special tool that's been with me for the last 15 years. I guess I'll have to make a new special tool out of this Sonic wrench that is now also no longer a 19, but a 19 and a half. But it should be fine to do my special tool job. So this one will be sacrificed soon, and I'll be shopping for a new 19mm open wrench. But how did I get it loose? In the end, by breaking wrenches, but also with a lot of heat. And I'm talking like putting heat on the bolt for at least 20 minutes. It was red hot. And then hitting it with a hammer to try and break the rust loose, using the impact gun to try and break the rust loose, using the penetrating fluid from WD-40 to try and get into those threads, and also even shocking it with cold water. A combination of all this stuff works on all 6 of the bolts. So I'll definitely be ordering new bolts for these 2 spots here, because I think those bolts must be really stressed now. So I'll order new bolts for this. The eccentric bolt that sits here is actually fine. It came out without too much fuss. So that's all good. So let's get the end caps off, and let's get the torsion plates off, and then we can start the rebuild process. So I've spent all night mulling around whether I should be re-indexing this torsion bar or not. And my gut is leaning towards re-indexing. What you are seeing at the moment is you can see that the torsion bar is now sitting exactly level on my workbench. I've done that with a bunch of shims on this side and also a bunch of shims on that side, which means I've also taken out any possible slack that's sitting in the spring plate. So now that I know that it's 100% level, I'm going to measure each of the spring plates, and then I'll know how much I need to adjust them by in order for me to get the 5 centimeter ride height increase that I've created at the front there. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to measure those blocks again with my vernier, make sure I know exactly how high those blocks are. Then I will translate that height into the angle of the torsion tube, and then I'll have a car that has exactly the same rake as it had before I did the lift. So let me quickly measure the spring plate angle. On the driver's side I'm seeing 20.3, and let's have a look on the passenger side. Here I am seeing 21.75. So already they are fairly out of spec. The factory spec book says they need to be 23 degrees. So we are out by about 2 and a bit degrees from standard. So it's drooped a bit over the years. Haynes says it should be 23 degrees in 40 minutes. So that's pretty much in the same range. And what Haynes also tells me is that I need to add 1 degree of angle on the spring plate for every 6 millimeters that I've lifted the car. So that means we need to get to somewhere around 30 degrees for me to get back to the factory rake on the car. So I've now also measured the angles of the spring plate in this position, and basically it is the torque tube sitting flat on its bottom edge. That means that this piece that was on level earlier is now slanted at roughly 15 degrees. And that then results in these guys being roughly 5 degrees. So I think I have enough measurements to know what my starting point is. I know what the factory wants this to be at, and I also know how much I need to adjust this for every 6 millimeters of lift I want. So I think I've got all the ingredients needed in order for me to do the re-indexing, which I have now decided to do. I've spoken to a bunch of the Safari guys on Facebook and also on Instagram, and they all re-indexed their torsion tubes. So I'm gonna go with their experience on this and trust that they are giving me good advice. So that leaves me with nothing left to do than putting out these spring plates and then start cleaning up this torsion tube and giving a desperately needed lick of paint. Wow, that was easier than I expected. Let's see what these, oh, these do not look good. These do not look good. I'm gonna have to get these cleaned up as well and repainted. There's been moisture in here. That's not good. Same thing here. It's also rusty. Alright guys, just before I continue the further strip down, I thought it's a good idea to just measure the thickness of this torsion bar, because according to Haynes it needs to be 21.5, I believe, and the optional was 23.5 with a sport suspension. What I'm seeing here, I don't know if you guys can see this, 23.5. So this car does have the optional thicker torsion bars. It doesn't have the anti-roll bar, which is weird, because they seem to have gone together. So maybe someone upgraded this in the past, I'm not sure, but it means that the angle that I gave you earlier of 23 degrees and 40 minutes is incorrect, and it needs to be, I think, 21 degrees, which this actually was. And also it means that the change in ride height needs to be calculated differently, because the 6 millimeter and 1 degree was for the thinner torsion bar. So I need to go check what the correct specs is for this guy now that I know it's the 23.5 millimeter bar. I've got these spring plates in my vise here, and it's filled with WD-40. It's a bit dirty WD-40, but that doesn't matter. The reason I'm doing this is because this is completely solidly rusted on the inside, and that is bad news, not just for the spring plates, but also bad news for my torsion bars. Porsche says you should replace this if it's slightly rusted, or if it has any rust even. And as you can see, they are badly rusted, which means these are no longer deemed to be safe. So I need to replace them. The problem is a new set of these guys, which is 23.5 millimeters, is €1,000. Which is not something I'm looking to spend on this car, to be honest. And added to that complication is that these spring plates also have to be replaced now, because they cannot be saved anymore either. So I'll be ordering new spring plates. I'm not going to do second-hand ones on this, but I am going to see if I can find an alternative to the original Porsche torsion bars. I'm pretty sure there must be a VW version that works, or a supplier that has something that is the same as this. So if you guys have any feedback, any advice, please let me know. I would be very, very happy to save the money. The other thing I'm doing is the torsion tube. I've already got this guy wire wheeled down, and it's currently just setting in the Brunox epoxy primer, which is the rust neutralizing spray that I use. So once that is dry, I can start painting this guy up, and hopefully in a day or so I'll be able to get these torsion bars out of its holders. If not, I have no choice other than cutting out the bottom and hammering them out. I'm gonna see if they are okay. I'm gonna see if I can save them. I don't know, to be honest, and if I have to, I guess I'll have to spring for new bars. but I think I need to get used to that idea first. That means it's the end of this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching my 924 Safari build. For me, this is a bit of a pioneering project. There's not really a lot of information on how to do this. So I am relying heavily on the Facebook group that has done this, and also some of the people I know in the industry who's got knowledge of all of these suspension geometry setups. So thank you for watching. And if you like seeing these kinds of videos, please remember to subscribe, as I see that half of you guys watching are still not subscribed, and subscribing really does help my channel along. So please leave me your feedback, your insights on the work that I'm doing with the torsion bars and all the other pieces of suspension lying on the floor here. I really appreciate your input, and it really does help me out. So until next time, goodbye.